Hello and welcome to another episode of the Everyday Legends podcast. I'm your host, Mike Campbell. Today I'm going to bring you a solo conversation where I'm going to dive into the idea of being a high value man. This is a term that you will see bandied about social media and various forms of content around anything, personal development, men's work, being a high value. You'll see it from men, you'll see it from women, you'll see it in all sorts of contexts. And I think there is some warrant in it. However, I think for a lot of the time, how I see it expressed and conveyed is quite, I don't know, let's call it misunderstood, misconstrued. And I think it can be very confusing to your everyday man who is coming across that term. What is it to be high value? First of all, I think we need to simplify down what being high value is, because what that invites us to do, first and foremost, is actually look at, well, what do we value? What would being a high value man? And you can come up with your own definition there, which I suggest you do. But before we do that, we might look at generally right now, today, and historically in our world, what have we placed value on when it comes to men? And, you know, there's a lot of nuance, of course, but as some fairly consistent and accurate broad brushstrokes, we have only really valued men for what we can do, what we can produce, what we can achieve, how good we are at what we can do. And one of the heavy consequences for that, for a lot of men, and of course, all of the people who experience consequences because of this, related to those men, who interact with those men, is that men only tend to value themselves or feel like they have a sense of worth when we can do things, when we can accomplish things, what we do, our jobs, let's say, and how well we do it. And whilst those things are important and they are valuable, one of the huge costs in there is that men never tend to, or can find it very challenging to, value themselves. We can find it hard to value ourselves for who we are. It all comes down to what we do and how well we do it and what we can accomplish with that. And so our sense of self and our self-worth is wholly dependent on what we can do and accomplish. And so we don't ever allow ourselves to feel, let's say, proud of who we are or value who we are. It only comes down to the result. And we're not going to throw the baby out with the bathwater on this. Achieving results is a very primal piece for men, for the masculine. Absolutely do that. But a result comes from a set of behaviors about who you are choosing to be. That's where I want to start, because so far we have fundamentally placed a high value man as someone who has all the achievements, a good job, good at what he does, earns good money, status, power, money, influence. And again, we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Those things can be very significant and valuable. They can be an indicator of the value of a man, but they aren't necessarily. There's plenty of, let's say, wealthy people in powerful positions and high status positions who are, let's be frank, not high value. They're pieces of shit, to be really blunt and judgmental on it. Low value. So I'm going to bring us all the way back to a very, very simple line. Now, I can never remember nor track where I first got this quote from. We'll do my best after recording to find it and put it in the show notes if we can. But it goes like this. Your values determine your character, and your character determines your value. I'll say it again. Your values determine your character, and your character determines your value. So I do invite you for a moment to perhaps pause this in a second and reflect. What does that mean? How do you decipher that? What does that bring up for you? What goes on in your head? How do you interpret that? I've played around with this line many times. I've reflected on it. I've discussed it, talk about it in my coaching program, the Everyday Legends Academy, a lot. And, you know, the men coming into Everyday Legends Academy, into the Development Academy, into the Zeus Inner Circle, any of my coaching containers, they might be wanting, let's say, to become a, quote, man of high value. Maybe there might be some idea of that in their head, their own version of it. But fundamentally, a few things that we're going to do is we're going to look at, well, who are you? What do you value? What do you want to be? Who do you want to be? And therein lies what we must absolutely do, is go from a very common approach, which is, I want to be high value. I want to be someone who is respected. I want to be someone who is approvable, who gets praise and recognition and status. So what we're often finding is we're going out into the world driven by our insecurities, sometimes blindly, sometimes very, very aware, and seeking belonging. We become terrified of judgment and rejection, and so we hide parts of ourselves. We learn somewhere along the line that being your full expression of yourself is not welcome, is not good enough. And I'm very broad brushstrokes, but in my experience of working with thousands of men, this is extremely common. It comes about in different ways, it manifests in different ways, but often core drivers for a lot of guys is somewhere along the lines that who I am is not what is appreciated, welcome, and respected and valued in the world. So I need to hide those parts of me that I don't deem valuable and be this other curated version of myself. The high value version, but we might use different language. This will be the version that is nice, that is respected, that is appreciated, that is approved of, that is valued, that belongs. And so we go about in the world trying to be this man that we think the world would want, be this man that we think women will want. And whilst there might be some truth in those, yeah, of course, be this, be driven, be decisive, give a shit about something in your life, apply yourself to things that are meaningful. All these things have value, absolutely. What we're losing there, what we're missing in that, is if the focus is on how do I be a high value person for the world, or that the world will interpret as high value, we're starting at the end point. We're starting at the end point. So I'll bring us back to the statement. Your values determine your character, who you are. So what you value and how you embody that determines your character. And your character is what determines your value, the value that you have in the world, the value that you bring your world, that you bring the world. How valuable you are. Man, I'm saying valuable a lot. It's getting me tongue-tied. What you value and how you embody that determines your character. Your character determines the value that you have, the value that you bring the world, how valuable you are to the world. So let's not focus so much on how do I be valuable. Hopefully you're starting to get the clues from this. Let's focus all the way back at the start on your values. What do you value, brother? That's where all of this work comes from. If you want to be a high value man, if you want to be a man of value, forget for a moment what you think might be valuable to the world, what you've learnt about what is valuable in the world as a man, all these things. Don't throw them away, just put them down for a moment. And let's first focus on who the fuck are you? What do you value? What do you want to value, right? In the world of Everyday Legends Academy, in the world of Zeus energy, what I talk about, we talk about this, the everyday legend version of you, right? The Zeus energy version of you. You might want to think about, we hear these terms like your best version, right? Your best self. How about your favorite self? If you were your favorite self that you might not have experienced yet, but you can get an idea of what that could be, what does that version of you value? And so in some sense, this is an exercise in figuring out your values. A lot of men have done this. They think they have a beautiful list of their values. Sometimes we can poke huge holes in that, which is necessary. We've got to put our values through the ringer. I'll make more sense of that in a moment. Some men have never done a values exercise and they have no idea. I would put it to everyone that on some level, regardless of who you are and what you've been through in your life and how much fear of judgment and rejection and insecurity is running your life, you have some level of understanding, innate understanding of what you value, of what creates a compass for your life. Because that's the way I like to think of values. Values are the compass for the direction of our life. And when you're going on an epic journey, you don't just get your compass out at the start and go, cool, all right, there's north over there, away I go. You have to continually get the compass out because a journey is not just one straight line from A to B. There's all sorts of hazards and things you've got to up and around and adversity and things you've got to work through and struggle and push through. And so we've got to consistently get the compass out to navigate the journey. We have to know our values. But it isn't just an exercise of going, I value respect. I value honesty. I value adventure. I value compassion. It is. But I like to think of a values exercise like an hourglass. If you think of the shape of an hourglass, the first part of that is to really condense down. Just brainstorm anything that seems to be of value to you. Traits and characteristics that you value in yourself, that you value in others, and things that you value in the world. And as we do that, we can start to whittle it down, and we might say, I have authenticity, I have self-expression, I have, these other things that are similar. So what's the thing that really cuts through for me? So we start to refine those down as we get towards the middle of the hourglass, let's say. So we start to get more of a refined list. Then what we must do is expand those things out. So I take a value like honesty or whatever it might be, freedom, and I go, right, what does that look like to me? How do I define it? Because guess what? Everyone values freedom. I can tell you that. But what it looks like, what it feels like, how we want it to manifest in our life looks and feels different for everyone. So we have to give it our own individual flavor. But here, so then we flush it out and we start to get, my value of honesty looks like this. How I embody it is this. What it looks like in my life is this. How I define it is this. I want honest people to be honest with me. Cool. Guess what? If you want a high value of honesty, you better be goddamn honest with yourself, with the honest version of you that you put into the world. It is not enough to say, I value people being honest with me. Are you being honest with them? Are you being honest with yourself? Are you being the most honest version of you in the world? Would be where I would start with those. And I've done podcast episodes on different values. I've done a podcast episode exploring loyalty, for example. But here's one of the biggest blocks, and this is where so much of the work comes in. Here's one of the biggest blocks for so many men when it comes to exploring and understanding their values. And that is, it's all well and good to do a values exercise, but somewhere along the lines, as we flush it out, we also want to start digging into and understanding, why do I value that thing? And what we might find when we start looking at our values is that some of our values are, in the world of ELA, Everyday Legends Academy, we call it villain-led. What are villain-led? And I've spoken about villains in previous episodes, but the general idea, your shadow, the parts of you that are formed around your original wounds and unmet needs, and they're form the basis of kind of your biggest fears and insecurities. They become this part of you that seeks safety, belonging, that perhaps might think that we're not good enough, all these pieces that I spoke to earlier. And so it forms behaviors, beliefs about oneself, and so on. And so I might be terrified of judgment and rejection of others. I might have a deep fear of inadequacy and not being good enough. And so I form a set of behaviors that are, let's say, self-deprecating. I diminish and reduce myself. I shrink myself. I don't want to be seen and judged. And so I kind of hide who I truly am, and I people please, and I chameleon myself to be whomever I think will be acceptable and valuable and approvable in the moment. So along the ways, I lose myself. And so what I can see when I look at what I have been valuing, which is a different question to what you do value, but we have to explore it. So we have to look at what I have been valuing, and what I might see is like, holy shit, I've been valuing other people's opinions of me. I've been valuing shrinking. I haven't been valuing myself. That's for damn sure, right? I've been valuing other people's opinions of me more than my own. I've been valuing hiding, shrinking. And I might be valuing many other things. So we have to understand what has been villain-led. So here's another example, which might be a bit of a head fake. I was working with one of the guys in my close Zeus Inner Circle program, where one of his values for the longest time has been hard work. And absolutely, go for it. Value hard work. Many people do. But when we look at it and we break it down, what we see is coinciding with the value of hard work is him being a very hard worker, extremely driven, extremely hard work, applies himself relentlessly. And life is always fucking hard work. He never has any ease. He's always busy. He's always flat out. It's one thing, next thing, one thing, next thing. When breaks come, he fills them. He finds it very hard to relax, to switch off, to even sit down and enjoy some TV with his partner, for example. And when we look at it, it's because there's been such a historic place, a historic value placed on hard work, that whenever life presents something that doesn't look like hard work, he makes hard work for himself. Because if he isn't living the value of hard work, what does it say about himself? He has no value, he has no worth, and so he has to make hard work for himself. He wants to experience more ease, more spaciousness, more peace in his life. But with the value of hard work in the way that it currently is and has been, he will never allow it. So what we have to actually do is we have to break that down, explore it, see what we really value in there, put down what no longer serves us, because that has fundamentally been villain-led for him. A historic belief about himself that he doesn't deserve love or belonging unless he has earned it, that he isn't good enough just as he is, has many other pieces to it. But one of those through lines becomes, life has to be hard. I have to be working hard. Otherwise, I have no worth. I have no value. And so his life is a mess. Or it was, at the very least. He was working all the time, working on weekends, busy, always distracted, always disconnected, always wanting to have space, but never allowing it, because when it came, he filled it. And I see this very common for a lot of guys. We want space, we want peace in our lives. And when moments like that come, we fill it. Even just by getting our phone out and distracting ourselves, for example. So our values, we have to put through the ringer. And when we look at that as an example, hard work, to put that down doesn't mean I no longer value hard work and I'm just going to be lazy, right? That's not it. That's so far at the other end of the spectrum. It's not a risk for this guy or any guys like that, generally speaking. But we go, what is in there that I can take with me? I value applying my skills. I value competence. I value applying myself to things that are meaningful to me. I value skill mastery. I value accomplishing things that are important to me. In there, we can take those pieces, but it doesn't mean we can't also experience ease, for example, and peace and joy and adventure and expansion, all these other pieces. So we have to figure out truly what we value in order to become a man of high value. And we have to truly pull our values apart, put them through the ringer, expand on them, and really start to understand, why have I valued that? So here's the first thing that you can do. It's a very, very simple exercise to explore what you have been valuing, not what your favorite best self, right? The everyday legend of Zeus energy version of you, right? Your favorite self, not what that version does value, right? Your deeper self, let's say, whatever language you want to use, your higher self. But what you have been valuing, often villain-led, often led by your insecurities, your fears, and all the shit that you've been through in the past. Where do you spend your time, energy, and money? If you do that, you're going to very quickly see, well, this is what I have been placing value in. Now, you'll tend to probably not get a list of words like honesty and integrity and so on. Those can be expanded upon and derived from that. But you will see what you have been valuing. Now, the work here is not to judge those things, but you might see like, oh, I spend most of my time at work, for example. Of course, it's practicalities and responsibilities. Cool, how much time? To the example of my client previously, like, oh, for all the time, way more time than I want to. Okay, so what else do you want to value? And so we can start to break these things down a little bit. We can start to break these things down, and we can start to form a list of what do I truly want to value. But we have to put it through the ringer, and this is where it can become very challenging for a lot of guys. I've got some guys right now in the Everyday Legends Academy struggling as they go through this module, because it can be challenging, because what we find when we get to this module of setting direction, really pulling apart and understanding our values and where we're going in life, is that I've often been driven by my fears and insecurities for so long that I've been running from them. I've talked about this in previous podcasts. But if I spend my life running from things, right, I'll be pushed by pain, past experiences, unpleasant experiences, insecurities. And if I'm looking over my shoulder, running from those things, I can never truly see what's in front of me and where I'm going. Now, I might make it seem like I'm going towards something, career, success, wealth, for example. But if those things are so that I, so that I no longer am, or so that I am then finally good enough, I can finally feel successful, I can prove others wrong. I want money so that I'm not poor. They're driven away from something, and it's never going to be truly meaningful. I'm never going to get anywhere meaningful, because I'm going to continue to be driven by it. I'm going to need more and more and more and more and more. Status, how I'm perceived by others, all these things. And so until I can internalize those things, they'll never work. Again, doesn't mean we throw the baby out with the bathwater. Don't be driven by some of those things, but it's actually give it something. Base it in something meaningful that pulls you forward. Instead of, let's say, just wealth or money, because you don't want to be poor. You don't want your kids to go through what you want to do. Stipulate, I want to create a home that is large and expansive, that, you know, is by the beach and where we can entertain, the kids can bring their friends over, and my family extended can come over, and we can celebrate and connect and have experiences together. That's meaningful, as opposed to away from the thing over there. So what we value is integral to having a compass, a North Star, and therefore your values determine your character. At the heart of what do you value, what do you want to value, right, is who do you want to be? Who do you want to be as your favorite self, right? The Zeus energy version of you. I have done a whole episode on the Zeus energy, by the way, so you can go and explore that. Because that will determine your character. That will determine the man that you are. And the man that you are, your character, is what determines your value. If you want to be a man of value, if you want to be a man that is appealing to a woman, that has value in the workplace, whatever it may be, focus on living your values. Now, there are some central pillars to some of those, regardless of what your values are. I would put it to you that to be a man of value also means to be a man of structure, health, wealth, curiosity, dependability. Now, what you value is entirely up to you. But I would say that underpinning so many things for so many men are things like health, self-respect, integrity, strength, honesty, curiosity. Whatever your own version of those are, they create a man who is capable in the world, who can understand himself. Think about self-awareness, right? Curiosity, self-respect. So many men are going out into the world hoping that we will be this and do that, and then the world will respect me, and then I can respect myself. It doesn't work that way. It's very hard to respect a man who doesn't respect himself. Respect must start with self. What would it look like for me to respect myself in life today? And this is the challenge for a lot of guys, is that we get into exploring our values, and it can become very aspirational. I want to value this. Okay, well, that doesn't get to be, I want to value this in a month, in a year, in 10 years from now. You want to value it. So value it now. So what does it look like to value it now? Now, it might shift a year from now, 5, 10 years from now. Cool. What does it look like now? So your values are not a future-based exercise, although they are, because you're going to be valuing them on some level. They might adapt and evolve, certainly in how you interpret them and how you want to embody them. But the real question with your values is, what does it look like for me to embody that now? Because living your values is where the work comes in. Your values are not a piece of paper a list that you write on a piece of paper and stick it up somewhere in your house, although they can be. They are a living embodiment of who you are. So you are consistently putting your values into practice. Experiment with them. I'm going to try this one on. Does it feel like me? You know, I say I value honesty. Oh, holy shit, this is asking me to be honest, like in really uncomfortable times. Yeah, living values can be challenging. And we can often be presented with a situation where, like, it's easier not to do it. It's easier to do this thing here. But remember, whenever we say it's easier to, what we're forgetting to say, but we need to say, is in the short term. It can be easier not to be honest with someone in the short term, not in the long term, not when you're out of alignment with yourself, when you're not respecting yourself or others in relationship, for example. It can be harder to be honest with someone. That doesn't mean you can't be kind. Honesty must have kindness with it. But it's also not kind to yourself to be dishonest to others and be dishonest to yourself. It's not respectful to yourself to be dishonest with others and dishonest with others and yourself. So these values can be extremely challenging. Now, a lot of men might not come up with, let's say, honesty as one of your top 5 values. But if I put it to you, do you value dishonesty? Everyone says, oh, no, I don't. I do not value dishonesty. So you value honesty on some level. You get to determine where it is. Do you value disrespect? Fuck no. Men hate disrespect. So you value respect. What does it look like to respect yourself? Put that at the top. Integrity and self-respect. But they can have an aspirational element to, oh, I see this guy over here, and I see him embody respect and integrity, for example, and I want to be able to become that. Cool. Well, it might look different for you right now, but you can absolutely embody those now. Every moment you have a choice. This thing or that thing, does this take me towards that value or away from it? Does that ask me to embody that value or not? Because I can tell you right now, living your values like honesty, respect, integrity, Holy shit. And being a coach to men and being a business owner, I have had my integrity challenged many times, both by people challenging it and just in terms of choices and so on to take. And it can be fucking hard. So hard. You know, in interactions with family members and friends, holy shit, fuck, it's hard. This is the choice I need to make, and it's hard. It would be easy not to. Yep, but that doesn't take me anywhere in the long term. My integrity says I have to choose this thing here. And that can be extremely challenging. But I'll tell you what feels fucking powerful, and that is honoring your values, living them, and being in alignment with them, because that is fundamentally what integrity is. Every time I choose to step away from my values, I weaken myself. I weaken my structure, because integrity speaks to the strength of a structure. And if I don't have integrity, if I don't have alignment with my values and how I'm living them, I weaken myself and my structure. And that is low value shit. So if you want to be a high value man, know your values, live your values, and watch your value change as a consequence. It doesn't mean it's easy, but if you want alignment, if you want peace within yourself, if you want self-respect in the long run, you've got to live your values. And, you know, we see it everywhere. And if you're not connected to this, I'll invite you to it. There's so many men in this world that are currently very disconnected within themselves, a sense of feeling lost, stuck, confused. I don't know who I am. You know, I've been working hard, but it's all of a sudden I find myself here. I've got these responsibilities, family, kids. I don't feel like I've got much purpose. You know, there's not much meaning. I clock in, I clock out. Any number of versions of that. And often what's going on is a disconnection from ourselves, from who we are, from who we truly can be, you know, this favorite version of ourselves. We don't understand our values and live them. So that's the first simplest piece. What have you been valuing? Why? What can you put down that is no longer serving you, driven by fear and insecurities and past experiences, villain-led? What do you want to value? What truly do you value? What does that look like for you? What does it ask of you? What does it look like to embody them now, in this moment, and the next moment, and the next moment? Live them, make them a living experiment, and then see what happens in your life down the road as a consequence. If you can live your values, and by the way, at the heart of that, I've mentioned it a couple of times, but just to reinforce it, at the heart of that is valuing yourself, okay? You will see who you are be based in self-respect, pride, proud of oneself. Your character becomes something strong, robust, resilient. You will see how you are valued in the world and valued by the people that you value. But we can't start there. We have to start with your values, what you value, and the man you are and can be. This work can be challenging for some guys to dig into because our level of understanding and awareness. This is where work, coaching, teaching, being mentored come in, because we can increase your base understanding of topics like this and your base understanding of yourself. Self-awareness is crucial to this. Unless you have a very strong innate self-awareness that knows what your compass is and you follow it, why you value those things and driven by that, just not that many people. Find places, areas, courses, coaches, therapists who can guide, support, poke, prod, challenge, keep you accountable to this. If you're going to be a man who lives his values, you're going to need people around you who back you up on that, who can keep you honest to them, challenge you in them, and keep you accountable to them, especially when you're struggling, who can remind you of your commitments to yourself, because that's what values are, and can remind you of who you're capable of being, especially when you can't see it or are struggling with it. So, to be a man of value, first focus on living your values, because your values determine your character, and your character determines your value. Then, once you've done that consistently, watch how your value shifts in the world and by those people who you value. Then we can address what it means to be a man of high value. That's our show. I trust you get something from this. Let me know how this lands for you, what it's brought up for you, questions, reflections, what you do with this. And please, you know, I don't get paid for this. We have no advertising around this. How this episode, how this podcast can grow is by you. Yes, you, not someone else, you sharing this with someone, at least one man who you think could benefit from it and enjoy it. Word of mouth and passing along is how this thing grows. I appreciate you. Until next time, that's our show.